Kelly Riddell of the Washington Times with us on the program. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And a really fascinating article at the Washington Times on Chicago's concealed carry rates, how the way the laws have been written, the rules and regulations that go along with getting a concealed carry license, how they may be proven to be barriers for low-income minority residents of Chicago who live in some of the most violent neighborhoods. The people who need these concealed carry licenses the most, Kelly, they're the ones who are least likely to be able to get them.
Yeah, I mean, and that bears true in the data. We put forward a FOIA request asking for all the zip codes within Cook County and the number of concealed carry licenses granted to each of the zip codes, and then kind of put that data up against census data to look at who's living in these zip codes, what's the average, income in these zip codes, as well as where are the most violent zip codes. And what we found that rang really true is in the most violent neighborhoods in West Garfield Park, in Englewood, where you have literally homicides happening every weekend. You have the lowest number of applicants applying for concealed carry. And then, in the more affluent suburbs, where you've had one homicide in the last 10 years is actually where we found the highest number of concealed carry licensees. So I mean, it's definitely something to take a look at and to hone in on as to why.
Well, and so you did talk to some Illinois residents. Sean Gowder, who is a concealed carry holder, he told you in these gangbang neighborhoods, people can't afford the license. They're making choices between food and medicine. They can't even guarantee they'll get even that. We need to arm ourselves and protect ourselves from these gangbangers, but we just can't afford to do it. I mean, how much does it cost simply to get, forget the firearm, how much does it cost to get the concealed carry license if you're living in Illinois?
Yeah, about $650 is the price of the license. It's the application fee, the taxes, and that also incorporates the training fees and the range time that you need to go there. So that doesn't even include the price of a gun. It's about $650, and it's the highest among right-to-carry states. And Illinois now is a right-to-carry state. And then the range time is another obstacle. You have to log in 16 hours if you're not a veteran or have law enforcement background, and that includes range time. And there are no ranges in the city of Chicago. They were banned a long while ago, and there's just no ranges there. So you have to go into the suburbs to log this time. And if you have a gun that's not licensed, it's illegal. And you want to ride public transportation, it's illegal to go on public transportation. So it's really a catch-22 for these people that are in the inner cities that lawfully want to protect themselves and obtain a gun and practice their Second Amendment rights. There really is a large barrier to entry here.
And Kelly, I mean, you're writing for the Washington Times. We're seeing, I think, this same sort of game plan being used in our nation's capital when it comes to the right to carry. Now, certainly the emergency ordinance that was passed by the city council, it's nowhere near what can be described as a shall issue system. It's a may issue system. Mm-hmm. So there's already that additional barrier for individuals. But, again, they require lots of training. There are no ranges in Washington, D.C., so folks are going to have to go outside of the district to get this training that is mandated. Mm-hmm. Were you able to talk with any elected official in the Chicago area or any gun control advocate, anybody who actually said, yes, here's why it should be harder to get a concealed carry license if you live in a bad neighborhood? Is anybody even willing to acknowledge that this is maybe perhaps even an unintended consequence?
Yeah, well, I did speak with Kwame Raoul, and he's a state representative in the Senate there who represents the South Side of Chicago. And he says, I mean, it really comes down to an ideological belief. If you believe more guns leads to more violence or less guns lead to less violence. And what he said, the main reason for the priciness of the registration fee is because he wants to stop illegal gun transfers. So he's worried that the more people who have concealed carry, the more people who apply, the more illegal gun transfers there'll be, and that fuels gun violence in Chicago. So what they did is they basically put all of these cost measurements in place. So they want to make sure they've got their background checks are right. They want to make sure that they're processing these right. They want to make sure that the Illinois State Police has got all of the tools that they need to trace down illegal gun transfers. And so basically the money that's being used to get these permits is going to these areas, he said, and that's a necessary thing to help cut down on gun crime in the city itself.
All right. Now, I realize, Kelly, you are a reporter, so I will not ask you to opine on the statement there by State Senator Kwame Raoul. However, I feel compelled to say that if that really is his reason for not supporting right to carry, is that they're concerned about a quote, a large part of perpetrators of violence are not people who legally own guns, but they're people who got their guns from people who legally obtained them. That's an issue far beyond concealed carry. Then we really get into gun ownership.
Yes.
To be a gun owner in Illinois, you have to have a firearms owner identification card. That's separate from a concealed carry license. I would say, and my rebuttal had I've been able to listen on that interview, is that, the folks who are, again, paying $650, who are going through the hours upon hours of training to get their concealed carry license, are they likely to then turn around and engage in illegal gun trafficking? It seems highly unlikely that those are the folks, again, who we really have to keep a close eye on.
I mean, and that is true, and that's when I say when it comes to just an ideological difference, because I also spoke to Dr. John Lott in putting this article together, and he's done studies that say, actually, the more people who are carrying that are law-abiding citizens, the less violence there is. And so I posed that to him, like, do you believe that, the more, good guys that are carrying, the less violence that there'll be? And I cited Pennsylvania, for example, which has a minimal licensing fee and no training required, and there's no high crime in Pennsylvania. You never hear about violent crimes happening in that state because of their more lax regulations. And he just did not buy into that argument. He said, people manipulate statistics. It just doesn't make any sense to him, any common sense to him, how this position could be justified. And so that is his reasoning. That is his rationale. And it's hard. It's hard when you go in with statistics and you just have someone say, "Well, this is just how I feel." So hey.
Well, like I said, Kelly, it's a very well researched, very well written piece, and I know this is not your first a piece covering the gun issue for the Washington Times, but you do fantastic work. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Well, thank you so much. It was great being here.